All right. Well, from book to, I should say, a book that tries to showcase more of a character, let's go into what the other parts of the Star Wars fandom has to say about Padme Amidala, or Padme Amidala, or Padme Skywalker, if you what if it. These are our top 5 Padme moments.
Padme moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was kind of tough because,
Yeah,
I think
this was my toughest top 5, top whatever we've done.
Yeah, I think so too because
Uh-huh.
Padme's a little bit more unique than most of the ones we've done. Where it's not necessarily. I don't think when I was going through this about, oh man, this was one of my favorite fights that they did, or this is one of my favorite this was a badass Dooku quote that he did, or something like that. A lot of Padme stuff too is I think for me, what she was meaning, what the meaning is behind what she's doing. Her being a senator, her being a queen, she's trying to also be level-headed. And, she has some cool action moments, especially, in Attack of the Clones. She does some cool stuff. In Clone Wars, she does some cool stuff. But
super cool stuff.
I don't think that that's always necessarily her best time to shine is in those kind of moments. So, this was kind of tough to kind of go through and look into.
Agreed.
And find moments. And
a character whose life is literally defined by the service of others. What she can do for others. A lot of my options are when she's being selfish.
Sure.
Because that's the only time that she can really say, this is who I am versus this is what I want for others.
Yeah.
Which is a very admirable thing that I had. It took me so much effort to try to find those moments.
Yeah. And I think going through these books kind of made more of that apparent to me. I don't think I really thought about how selfless Padme is throughout all the movies.
I get you.
Until reading these books and really getting into her head and kind of getting that idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily how oh my gosh. Padme Amidala was played by Natalie Portman. I don't know if that's necessarily how she was trying to portray whenever she was playing Padme, but after having these books and what they're kind of putting into Padme and her in between those moments.
I get you.
I think really put that into my head where I'm man, that kind of sucks of how much she pushes for everyone else.
Yeah. One, I enjoyed being part of your process right there where you were trying to remember the name. That was really cool. Two, I agree. I think Padme's biggest strength, especially in the Phantom Menace, is what a lot of people don't like about her, and what the books emphasize is that when she's Amidala, she's playing a part.
Yeah.
When she's Padme, she's more honest.
Yeah.
And by definition of how the story goes, you don't necessarily know when is which. But one of my moments, if we want to go ahead and get started,
sure, go ahead.
Is from Star Wars Episode 1, where Padme is just being as honest as possible, being as her as possible. It is on Tatooine with Qui-Gon Jinn. They're talking about what they're going to do, and Padme's like, I don't think the Queen would be cool with us entrusting, all of our hopes and dreams in this little boy. And then Qui-Gon's just like, we doesn't need to know.
Yeah, I don't approve.
And then she sits there, and it's when he walks away. She does it to herself. Padme never speaks about herself, ever. But, in that moment, she gets to sit there and be petty and say, well, I don't approve, you know? And I love that we can take that moment and add or compound to, does Qui-Gon know?
Sure. And first time watching that, you're just well, she doesn't agree, and she's one of the handmaidens, but whatever. Qui-Gon's going to do it. Yeah. But then you watch it later on, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
She was saying that, too, because she's like, I can't say that I'm the queen.
Yeah.
But I don't approve of this. And all I can say to him is that the queen,
I know.
And it's I have to bite my tongue, and I can't do anything.
I love that moment. It's one of the few moments in that trilogy that Padme gets to not be perfect, or as perfect as her elected responsibilities ask of her.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite top five.
Okay. In my 5, my 5th one I took from Clone Wars.
Clone Wars.
Which was from Heroes on Both Sides. I don't necessarily have a specific moment, I guess, except for the fact that she's willing to go and talk to a separatist, senator, and try to find an agreement out of this war and find another way. And this is more of a, I guess, selfless, maybe selfish, because she doesn't want a war either, I guess. But she's willing to go and make this dangerous trek to talk to Bontari.
Yeah.
And attempt a collaboration between the two of them. And I really
actually let's actually solve this with diplomacy.
Yeah.
Not, our heads of state, our secret Sith lords that make it not happen. What if we actually just, because this is the one that she has to like have Ahsoka like help her sneak her way on, right?
And Ahsoka the whole time is not necessarily for it because it's a separatist.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's such this stigma on like we're the Republic, they're the separatists, they're the bad guys. Yeah. And you learn as a viewer too, because I mean, like we said about Trade Federation, right? Trade Federation, ever since episode 1, like those guys are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And this one here, from Padme, you get to learn, especially that that's not the case. There are separatists who are they're just trying to live too, and they just don't agree with the Republic. But because of these crazy Sith overlords that are manipulating everything, they don't necessarily know everything that's going on, and they're at odds with each other.
Exactly.
And I love that Padme is willing to take that risk, and Ahsoka helps her with it, but to go and try to broker this deal. And it all ends with tragedy.
It does.
Which sucks, but I love that Padme is willing to risk as much as she can to help the galaxy.
It's one of the most like non-essential but important arcs of the Clone Wars. Is like this has to be attempted. Like we have to do something like this, or it kind of makes all the battle episodes and stuff kind of ring untrue. Like it's only like war is inevitable because we can't agree. But if you find, like you said, like if we find out that these heads of states are really just Sith Lords working for each other to profit off of our misery, it's like, well, maybe we should try another avenue of communication, which is illegal. It's like I think it was very important to keep that there because unfortunately we miss out on the rebellion scenes from Revenge of the Sith where Padme literally is building the rebellion in the behind the scenes of the Senate. But this I feel like gives a much needed push of like sometimes like the right thing and the way the government wants to do things is not going to be the best way, and it's important for a politician to do that. You know, Padme is primarily a politician.
Yeah, because so much like you were going through that, but it made me think of in the book that we just read. There's a moment where they're talking about like, oh yeah, they're calling it the Clone Wars. Like, oh yeah, need a catchy name so you can sell more hollows. Like it's not about trying to find any way to broker peace or anything like that. It's like, well, what can we get out of this? And they don't know that all the higher ups are working on it together. Yeah.
Who named the Clone Wars?
I don't know who did. The media.
Because Yoda is the one that says it.
Begun the Clone Wars have. Yeah.
Now, did someone like hear him say that, or does
he like say that after someone else?
Was he on the elevator up to the tower, being like, "Oh, Clone Wars is starting"? Like, "Oh, Clone Wars, sure, cool."
That's a good name. All right, I guess a good name.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm curious.
Not sure either.
All right. That was a good moment. That is on my list, but as an alternate, so I'll be good. Aaron.
So was my. Well, I don't approve.
This will be my number 4. My number 4 is I'm kind of in the same boat where like you mentioned like, well, it's not just like one moment as opposed to like a big scene or a story part.
Because like with mine there, it could be like, well, it's because she decided to go. That moment of her doing that action is great.
This is a hard list for me to create because I don't love the way that Padme is treated in relation to her relationship with Anakin sometimes.
Okay.
In that her responses to his fascism is like, sometimes.
Okay. Like in the field?
Yeah, like in the field, and it's just
like you sound like a dictator. It's like, oh, well, maybe that's what they need, It's like, oh, you're joking.
Sure. Like it's hard for me to like, well, I guess, they got the chemistry, but like I feel like how is that red flag not being like
Padme, there might have been a couple signs.
Yeah, exactly. And the Nexus is right. There's a whole damn meme about it. But all that being said, I love the moment in Revenge of the Sith where Obi-Wan comes to Padme and says, I've seen the holo recordings. Anakin's there. He's killing younglings. He's done this. I love Padme's denial of that. Like, she says, I don't believe it. I can't. Padme, I feel like, is a character. I mean, almost every other character, you really get to see their flaws. Like, her only flaw is Anakin Skywalker. I saw someone put, like, Anakin Skywalker is Padme's only blind spot in her entire character arc. And I don't think anything personifies that.
Sure.
Probably more, unless you're, like, talking about, like, I killed them, all of them. Not just the men, but the women, the children, And she's just like, everybody gets angry, you know.
Sure.
But this one, at the very least, I love that it's a selfish thing, because when she says, "I don't believe you, I can't," she's admitting, like, there's a part here where, like, if I admit that I'm wrong there, like, my greatest weakness is my greatest downfall. Most people want to say that their weaknesses are the weaknesses, but their strengths outweigh them, you know. But if she admits that's the case, then it's like I'm undoing everything I've ever worked hard for. You know, if I admit that. And I thought that's a really needed moment of humanity that she rarely gets in those movies.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. No, I get that.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely something there with her and Anakin. I mean, in the book that we had, there's a moment where she relates to being like, for a moment, she understands what Anakin felt with the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah.
You know, like there is a connection there that she understands how angry you can be and how things can happen and stuff, but she always pulls back. She always, if there's something that she can investigate, she does that before just denying it. You know, she takes everything with like a grain of salt, but also with an element of truth to make sure that if there's, you know, a chance of this being true, I need to make sure.
Sure.
But in that like there's such a love for Anakin, and so much of her, you know, in the book talking about if I was to fall in love with someone, it's going to be hard. Yeah. Like this is the person she cares the most for. It's one of the only selfless things that she's done, and if it is, that what is she going to do? And I think it also kind of feeds in a little bit to she's dying of heartbreak, she's lost the will to live kind of thing, where it's like she was so enraptured and enthralled with Anakin Skywalker that him becoming what he becomes is too much for her to be able to handle, right? It's kind of like one of those things in a way, and if you want to go with the idea of like Darth Vader kills Anakin, so there is no Anakin Skywalker, whenever there's two people who are in love and one of them passes, sometimes that the second person doesn't take too much longer before they pass as well. And sometimes it's that connection they have. And I think Padme definitely has that connection with Anakin. Agreed. So yeah, that moment there with Obi-Wan where you're like, what do you mean? Obi-Wan's telling you he did it. Yeah. Can't you understand that? It's like, well, I think she can. Sure. But she can't believe it.
And we talked a little bit in the book review about how Padme so rarely is allowed to act her age. Like, I think it is it's an adolescent thing, like her love for Anakin Skywalker, because she is. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Young love is young love.
Sure,
but
she never got to be a kid.
Never got to be a kid. So when that hits, it hits hard. Yeah, because she has no wall up against it, really. Except for Paulo on the damn beaches or whatever that guy was. The artist. We would swim out into the terrible waters in Naboo. Why would you ever swim?
There's some nice waters there.
No, dude,
just don't go deep.
Have you seen the fish?
Don't go deep.
There's always a bigger fish in Naboo. Anyway, that's mine. That's my number 4.
Okay. Mine for number 4 is back in episode 1. We've gone to the Senate. We've told them what's going on. Yeah. Senate doesn't want to do anything. What am I supposed to do? And she's like, we're going back to Naboo. And this 14-year-old queen crafts the idea of going back to Naboo and is like, wait, Gungans are warriors? Yeah. And like doesn't fully on her own create a solution, but also kind of comes up with a solution to help her people. And she's like, I can't just wait for how long until the Senate decides, like, well, let's elect the new chancellor. Yeah. Let's do that. And then let's all vote again on what to do for Naboo. Yeah. She takes action and she's 14 years old. And 14. This is an occupation. This is war. Yeah. Like I find that to be impressive. Also on the selfless side, like she's doing this for her people. But I think that's like just something like Qui-Gon didn't think about this. No one else seemed to think about it. But she's like, you know what? This Jar Jar Binks, which everyone doesn't like, serves a great and important purpose and leads her to thinking of how we can like get back Naboo and what we can do. Yeah. And it might be a long shot. It might be a Hail Mary. But what else are we supposed to do?
Right? And she's 14.
Dude,
and that makes, like, when you think about how in episode 2 we learn how, she served her terms and then she, is not queen anymore. And Anakin's like, I heard that the people of Naboo tried to destroy their own constitution just so that you could serve more. Yeah. Because you got to think about it. A 14-year-old went to the Senate and deposed its leader for you. Like, the Chancellor affects trillions of beings. It's a big deal that she was able to get that vote of no confidence in for Valorum's leadership. But, like, can you imagine, like, I mean, I don't know, we wouldn't have an equivalent on Earth of,
No.
like, the king of the world, was deposed because this small nation is being attacked, and that's how badass their 14-year-old queen is.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know, that's a hell of a thing that she did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that should have been on my list. It's so good. Good job, Aaron. She has that great line, like, I was not elected, to watch my people die and starve while you discuss this in a committee.
Yeah, discuss it in a committee.
I love that line so much.
But you know what I love, though, too? Like, she, at the same time, is so... It's got to be so hard. She's trying to keep all emotion in check in that. Yeah. And, like, we talked about it before, but, like, going through all of the Queen, like, the Queen's always very emotionless because it helps her to, like, try to rule a little bit, right? But it also helps to hide how she would act whenever handmaidens are being swapped out and stuff, too. If they all act very stoic, it kind of helps to blend that a little bit,
Yeah.
So, like, in that moment, like, she doesn't get super outbursty, but I feel like it's also probably hard to not be super outbursty in that moment where it's like, my people are dying and you guys are arguing over, trivial things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, what number are we on, Aaron?
3.
My number 3 is from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Season 6. And it's the Clovis stuff from that season.
Clovis, okay,
yes. One of my favorite Padme moments of all time, because I wish it happened more. Anakin sees Clovis being a little handsy with Padme and goes off the deep end to the point that he's going to beat this man to death until Padme calls for help. And Clovis is taken away. Padme doesn't, like, have Anakin get in trouble or anything, but he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, you scared me today. Like, you went straight to violence with this. And she says, like, I don't know if this relationship can survive that. Like, Anakin chokes her almost to death at the end of her life. Like, when we watch that, even when I watch it now, I have a bias to Anakin. And I go, like, Padme, he's not really like that. It's a dark side thing. But her red flag goes up. And this is a woman who, I think you can make an argument, was killed by her husband.
Yeah. Sure.
I wish this came up more for her character. I wish it wasn't like I killed I killed an entire tribe, even the ones that were innocent, maybe, and she just like, well, to heirs to be human, I wish she had more of a conversation, or more of like, Anakin, like, at the very least, we got to go talk to your father figure Obi-Wan about this, because this is not the 10-year-old boy that yelled yippee.
Yeah, right?
This is an angry...
Who thought I was an angel.
This is a man who just told me that if people disagree with me, they should be made to agree with me.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate the Clone Wars for enhancing, some of the weaknesses of the prequels, but that scene personifies one of my greatest problems with Padme as a character, in that it happened there, at least. She saw it. And while she still is a character of endless hope, like, even when she's sitting there dying and her twins are born and stuff, like, she's just like, Obi-Wan, they're still good in him. Like, she doesn't have any reason to believe that, but she still does. It's her greatest strength, but it can be one of her greatest weaknesses, and I love that scene for at least shining a light on it.
It could be that could be that there's still good in him kind of stuff, too. Yeah. Like, it's that I can't, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of matching with that, but
yeah.
But no, Clone Wars having a moment where she's like, even a little bit of doubt of like, I don't know if this can survive, that kind of stuff is great for her to work with. But there's a lot of examples of Anakin like jumping to violence and doing exactly that, where it's like, you could have talked this, you could have had a little bit of diplomacy.
Sure.
But he also stands for it's a weird thing, because it's like, well, he will stand for who he cares about and who he loves, and he's always trying to protect them. But then there's also like, when that anger comes out.
I feel like, we had a conversation a couple of badonkagonks ago about like what's the true dynamic between Anakin and Vader, like we sometimes like chalk up all the bad things Anakin's ever done and say, oh, that's Vader. That's the Vader in him,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm guilty of not letting Anakin own those mistakes sometimes, because I have the Vader thing in the future to place it on, and I can go, it's going to happen. He's going to be dark,
Yeah.
But like, in terms of like a relationship, like, I feel bad for Padme.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly what Yoda
I
said.
feel real bad for him. It's a very tragic story.
Like, there's the moment when they're interviewing him.
Yeah.
And they talk about the fear, and he talks about his mom. And as we go through episode 2, he loses his mom.
Yeah.
And all that fear that he had and what he was worried about, never seeing her again or her dying, that all comes to fruition. And then exactly the path that Yoda lays out as to where fear goes is what Anakin falls into.
Yeah.
And he personifies that.
But that all comes from a slave's mentality, which is not his fault that he was raised that way.
Sure.
You could say it's the Jedi's fault for training him anyway, despite having these issues.
Sure.
You know.
Which is also why they didn't want to train him, right?
And it's also like this, the tragedy of being a Jedi is that if you want to feel the fullest, you actually can't use this power.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to other people that you can use it and put your will over others, you know? Right. Okay, yeah, that's my 3.
That was 3. Yep. My 3 is going back to the first of the trilogy of books that we read.
Okay.
So that was Queen's Peril.
Queen's Peril, sure.
Queen's Peril.
Gotcha.
One of my favorite things, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit here, I think, but there is, towards the beginning of the book, we have Padme and Panaka talking, and she has just been elected queen.
Yes.
And Panaka has already gone and...
Queen's Shadow was the first book, is what...
Was Shadow the first book?
Yeah.
That might have been. Okay.
Again, chronological.
Yeah. So the very first book, though, she just got queen.
Yeah, Peril is the Phantom Menace, but Shadow took place, or was written before this one. I know it's confusing, but I understand.
Okay. Yeah. The one that takes place during the Phantom Menace.
I was trying to clarify, and I think it just muddied the map.
Okay, so this one here is Panaka has scouted out Sabe during that part, right? And he's introducing this idea of the Sabe being a handmaiden, and they could swap places and all this kind of stuff. I love that Padme, this also kind of goes with like her going back to Naboo. This is also this 14-year-old who is talking to her security advisor and is like, we need more handmaidens. And he's like, why? And I love that Panaka's like, this is a test. Like, he's realizing this is a test from the queen.
Yeah.
But she's like, she crafts the idea of like having more handmaidens will make it so much easier to swap out and do things rather than just having one handmaiden and then that handmaiden is just gone.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those things where it's like the mind of Padme and being able to think out like what are the outcomes, what can we do, and in conjunction, I guess, with all this is figuring out as all the handmaidens join in what they all can be and talking it out with all of them. It kind of becomes like a joint project that they all kind of figure out and fall in line with.
Yeah.
But it all started with Padme being like, we need more handmaidens because of the idea you have is almost there, but it's not quite good enough, security officer, you know? And if it wouldn't have been for her having this idea, the whole handmaiden thing may have fallen flat. The attack on Naboo may have succeeded, and they might have caught the queen, and they might have made her sign that treaty and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think that
that's good.
Her having that moment also shows that this little girl is really smart. When this guy's whole job is making sure she's protected, she can take it a little step further and go a little further with, like, what all can we do with this idea that you have.
Yeah, I like that one.
I just really like that.
That's a really good one. I actually don't have anything from the books on my list, but I did have an honorable mention, which was just a quote from Queen Shadow, which is evil. I've fought evil. That's easy. I shot it. It's apathy I can't stand, which I think really sums up Padme.
I've shot evil.
Like, evil, I can deal with evil. I can recognize evil. I can debate evil. But apathy, when you, like, you know the facts, but you don't care. Like, you can't. That's why democracy or liberty dies to thunderous applause. Like, they don't care. Yeah. I care, others care a lot. But, yeah, so that's my honorable mention there, just to piggyback off of yours from the book.
Well, you named another honorable mention.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you said thunderous applause. Unless that's not an honorable mention for you.
That's not one of mine.
That was one that I wrote down on mine where I'm like, you know what? This is the one people always talk about.
It's a gorgeous line.
But I love that.
For me, it's more of a George Lucas line than it is a Padme one. I don't know why I think that. I'm like, hell yeah, George. Good job, buddy.
Sure. I get what you mean. But I think, too, like, it really works with Padme where she's like,
you're right.
She's believed so much in the Republic and what democracy can be. And then she's seeing everyone falling for this.
Yeah.
And if the whole rebellion building thing would have been in the movie, I think it really fits well, next to this, where it's like, this is how democracy dies. Like, well, we can't just let this end here, you know? Yeah. And she makes a rebellion with that. But yeah, I think the thunderous applause is a great quote from Padme.
Fantastic. That's one of your honorable mentions?
Yeah.
All right, so I got to go to my number 2. Aaron, my number 1 and number 2 are so close together. I'm not sure which one to pick.
Oh, I thought you meant like
no.
literally like
no.
this one happens, and then you know what? This one happens.
Like, I like these equally. And again, I was kind of struggling of like, what are my favorite moments? And I feel like one of these options is like an overthought, not necessarily like a specific Padme moment. So maybe I'll save that one for my number 1, just to keep the mystery. So my second one is Attack of the Clones, and Anakin, who, like Mace Windu, is looking at him and being like, don't go anywhere. Protect the queen. That is your mandate. Do nothing else. And Anakin's like, dang it. Anakin loves to break the rules, but he's not good at it.
Sure.
But you know who's really good at breaking rules and no one knows she does? Padme. And she goes, no, he gave you orders to protect me. I'm going to get Obi-Wan.
I'm going to go get Obi-Wan. Yeah. You better come with me and protect me.
Like, that is one of my favorite interactions in that whole movie. That has a lot of interactions of Anakin and Padme.
Sure.
Some of them fall flat for me. Some of them don't. But that one gives me such joy because it's like Anakin, like, I feel like Anakin, like, he's been infatuated with her, but at that point he realizes, like, oh my God, she would be really good to have around in like a sticky situation like this. What a great thought, you know? Because Mace Windu, I'm sure they got back, and Mace is probably sitting there like, Anakin, I told you, and Padme can come up like, actually, you know, and Mace has to be like, okay, citizen, you know, walk away.
I feel like it mirrors a little bit of that whole, like, Qui-Gon told me to stay in this cockpit, and that's what I'm going to do.
Exactly,
you know? Like, it's one of those kind of things, and I do.
It does,
I do really
but
like
I just like it from someone that so successfully doesn't always tell the truth to people, you know? Like, Padme, like, she has a heart of gold, but like I said, like, is it strange that, like, she doesn't, like, she tells, like, dignitaries of other planets, like, this is me, but it's not you, you know? So I like that. I've always loved that moment. So that's my number 2.
All right.
Yeah.
No, it's really good. Okay. Number 2 for me is, I guess after that one, one of my favorite, and this one's more on. Well, let me just. It's in the Geonosis arena,
Patronaki arena.
I love where Anakin and Obi-Wan are tied up, and Anakin's like, but what about Padme? And Obi-Wan looks over and is like, she's got things handled, and she like she's undone herself. She climbs up to the top of this thing. She's fighting a Nexu. Like all these things that she does there. It's kind of, this is the one that I think is different from my other moments, where it's less about like her thinking and her. Like, this is actually, like, she's able to handle herself. It's not just about, like, how about this idea? Or I need to go back and help, and I'm going to craft an idea for it. It kind of parallels a little bit with her willing to fight on Naboo with Panaka and push into the throne room. But this is, like, you're right. There's no one else to help her in this situation necessarily. They're all 3 tied up. And this is Padme, like, all right, I'm going to get myself out of here, and then we'll figure out what the next step is. And I just really like that she also can handle herself.
Yeah.
And also, I think this mirrors her and her handmaidens from the book, where, like, where did she learn to do all this different stuff? How can she pick a lock? How can she, all that
you're
stuff?
Right.
She's learned so much from her handmaidens, and I think that this is kind of that collective of all these handmaidens have gifted her enough talents that she's able to also do this.
You've convinced me. That's a great moment. I think that I've allowed, and this is primarily a thing that I've done in my adulthood, I've allowed my annoyance of George Lucas being like, I want her to look hotter.
Oh,
have the next to
cat
like
have
the kitty cat, like, and I can see her midriff,
Sure, yeah.
She's so much hotter, we can sell the toys better, like I think I've let that infect that scene a little bit too much for me, because you're right.
I get that.
It adds in all that stuff. My favorite tone poem, we went over those a couple months ago. One of my favorites is Padme's, where he's like, there are things I cannot do. I cannot let people suffer. I cannot let this happen. But there are certainly things I can do,
Yeah.
She can do that. I'm not defenseless against this monster. This monster needs to worry about me, baby, and these abs, baby. Like that thing cuts off, but it keeps the abs.
Yeah. No, I mean, and this is like, this is also after, and hopefully this isn't one of yours too, because I thought about it being, but like, just before they get rolled into there, she confesses her love to Anakin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this a moment where it's like, well, we're probably going to die, I don't want you to not know I love you before I do this.
Anakin's thinking like, I need to kiss someone
before
I die.
But they have that moment, and then she also, like, I'm going to put this bobby pin in my mouth. I'm going to make sure I'm ready to escape and figure out something. I'm not giving up. I have told him because we could die here, and I want him to know that, but I haven't given up yet, you know? So I just like that she doesn't give up easy.
It's a good one.
And it also, like I said, like I think also after reading these books, it just kind of compiles all the handmaiden stuff that she's gone through and learned and worked with.
I keep using the phrase a generational fandom scene, but yeah, you can look at that for so many different ways with all the ways that we've enjoyed Star Wars.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Well, I'll go to my number one. I think it's pretty unconventional. I don't know if anybody has this moment as one of their favorite Padme moments.
Okay. But then I'm not worried about it being
I think these lists are only valuable whenever they are individualistic, so I think I got a pretty good one for my number one. Mine is the beginning of episode 2, not after the assassination attempt, right after the assassination attempt, where Padme is in the office with Chancellor Palpatine and a couple Jedi.
Okay.
And she goes, I think Dooku's trying to kill me. And all the Jedi, these super powerful, this one is 900 years old, like they have the power of the Force and all of their wisdom. And they're like, oh, you dummy. He's a political ideal. He used to be a Jedi. There's no way, you stupid dummy. And Palpatine, the Sith Lord, who's tricked everybody, included these guys right here. The Jedi Counselor is sitting there like, how the fuck does she know that? Because it's a gut instinct. It's not the Force. She doesn't have the Force, so we don't think so.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan tracks it all the way down, and who's he find at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Dooku.
Yeah. Padme figured that shit out just because she can read people in a way that's not through the Force or through this like crazy, magical intuition. Like she knows politics, she knows actions, she knows like she gets like a feeling from somebody and reads them a different way. Like she gets it in the first 5 minutes, but no one listens to her. That's one of my favorite Padme moments because she's sitting there like across from powerful Jedi Master, amazing Sith Lord. Bam! I cracked it in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. And sitting, right in front of this Sith Lord who's like, I have tricked every... Oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly. He's got to be sitting there like, how does she know? I've worked this out. I told Dooku, Dooku told Jango told Zam.
I also told him to use a different name.
Exactly. Think about like how much he buried that assassination attempt.
Sifo Dyas is a part of this,
Newt Gunray wants Dooku to do it. Dooku gets Jango gets Zam gets the assassin droid gets Worms. Like they try to hide it so much.
Yeah.
And Padme in the first 5 minutes is like, it's him.
Yeah, he did it. That one. Man, that's a really good one.
Yeah, that's mine. That's my number one.
I think it makes mine terrible then. No, mine, and I think mine might be recency bias a little bit with the book and everything that we just read.
Yeah, okay.
But what this one did for me around the idea of the wedding, I really liked like all of her thoughts, all of the stuff we talked about where it's like she is always doing so much stuff for other people.
For others, yeah.
I chose the marrying Anakin as like my favorite moment for Padme. One, it's also really, really important to the story because you don't get Luke and Leia and all that stuff if you don't have this happen.
Yeah.
But two, it is like I think there's not very many like just selfless things that she does solely for herself. You can be like, well, she went to go talk, to Bonteri.
Yeah,
that's that helps stops the war, and that's really good for her, right? Yeah, but it's good for so many people. Yeah. And like her going back to Naboo, is like, oh yeah, that's her home and stuff, right? Yeah, but she's doing because her people are suffering. She could have just stayed on Coruscant where she was safe and not risked herself to go back. This is I'm marrying Anakin Skywalker because I love him.
Yeah,
I know that it's not a thing a Jedi should do.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's
she
shouldn't. Yeah, all that, right? Like she knows how wrong this is.
It's very wrong.
If not for wrong for her, it's at least wrong for Anakin. And she is aware of all of this, and she does it for herself.
Yeah, for herself.
And I think like the way that this book really describes like her mindset, the things she's thinking about, like everything that she's like looking forward to. Like I love how excited after reading this, like and watching scenes in episode 3, and there's not a ton of scenes of her in episode 3, but she's so excited for the baby. She's talking about going back to that lake house, like all the things that she could get, and she never gets that.
Can't get them.
She never gets to have those kind of moments. This is one happy moment that she gets selflessly just for her. and for Anakin, I guess. But I really like it, not just for the story element, but because of this book describing like just all of her thought processes, and then me, I guess, realizing for the first time how she does so much for everyone else that she never gets to do anything for herself, and this is that moment.
I think you're correct. I think that's a very appropriate number one for Padme, because I think because I know where Padme's story goes. Like I look at that scene and I'm bringing all that baggage with me, but that doesn't mean like if we treat her like a real person that had real joy on that day, the value of that joy is not to be understated. Even though it ends in tragedy, so too does all things.
Sure,
you know,
right? Every marriage will end in some loss of some sort, right? Like that's what's going to happen.
For the first time in her life, she gets to say, "I'm picking for me," and for the first time in Anakin's life, someone picks him for him. Really.
Yeah.
You know, not because he's an amazing, powerful, chosen one that can do this stuff, or that he can, fix everything, so he's a good slave, or he's a really good pilot. It's like, no. I just love you.
Not because he got a lot of midichlorians.
Yeah, exactly. So,
not because his master died and he said he was going to do it, so I got to do it now.
So if you put that at your number one and you focus on that moment and how much joy and passion those characters had for each other, it makes all the other contrasting things that happen, I guess it's a little bit easier to have to experience or have to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was our top 5 Padme Amidala moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Padme Nibiri. Padme Skywalker.
Padme.
What if?
Padme.